Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ryan Bijan, host of Cowtown Movie Classics. Tonight, we are bringing you a very moving, unconventional romance from the master of melodrama, director Douglas Sirk. It is All That Heaven Allows, reteaming Sirk with the stars of Magnificent Obsession, Jane Wyman, and Rock Hudson. Joining me today is a contributing writer for Turner Classic Movies. He is also a programmer for El Paso's very own Plaza Classic Film Festival. Please welcome Mr. Jack C. Fields.
Good morning from Warner Brothers, the star of tonight's film, Jane Wyman. She was under contract here for almost 10 years. So, yeah.
Certainly a lot of history in that shot. Now, this movie came out in 1955, and it was released through Universal International. So where was Jane Wyman at this point in her career?
Well, Jane Wyman had left Warner Brothers after, as I said, almost after 10 years, where she was mostly just the ingenue or the girlfriend until she won her Oscar for playing a deaf mute in Johnny Belinda. Very somber but very good movie from 1948. And I think it was after that, after winning an Oscar for that, that she got taken very, very seriously as an actress. So she was kind of a freelancer throughout the 1950s. And when she partnered up with Douglas Sirk, beginning with Magnificent Obsession, she was kind of this queen of the 1950s glossy, colorful, aesthetic melodrama. Yeah.
And that brings me to my next question, actually. So you look at this film and Magnificent Obsession. What was the Douglas Sirk hallmark style? Because he was certainly a very visually distinct filmmaker.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he was relied very heavily on color and aesthetics and elevated stories. He wasn't afraid to show a lot of tears and a lot of emotions and elevated acting and elevated characters and elevated aesthetics. And it's my understanding that he was not terribly critically acclaimed for that in his time. However, it was with the rediscovery both in French film scholarship and since that he understood the kind of operatic sense that makes movies as enjoyable as they are. And that's why he's earned the praise of very operatic filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino, of all people, is a huge Douglas Sirk fan. And Martin Scorsese and currently Todd Haynes lists Douglas Sirk as probably his greatest influence.
And rightfully so. I mean, you watch these movies today, I think he's an incredible storyteller, incredible visual storyteller. I like that you brought up Quentin Tarantino, because I remember as a kid, the first time I had ever heard the name Douglas Sirk was in Pulp Fiction. I think Uma Thurman, she's at the 50s diner. Or no, it's is it John Travolta? He's the one that orders the Douglas Sirk steak extra
Yes.
bloody.
Yes.
So that's
that elevated thing that he brought to his movies, and of course that Quentin notoriously brings to his.
Mm-hmm. But they're very different filmmakers. Now, there are people in the audience who have seen Magnificent Obsession, which is a wonderful film, very moving film. But what do they have to look forward to in this film?
Well, you're seeing two very good performances, as you did in Magnificent Obsession, from Jane Wyman and a young and beautiful Rock Hudson. And you're going to see a May-December romance, even though I think Jane Wyman was in her late 30s and Rock Hudson was in his late 20s. So 10 years younger. Wow, how outrageous. But in the 1950s, that was a thing. And you're going to see two great, beautiful stars, and you're going to see some beautiful aesthetics. Like I said, the emphasis on color, the blues, blue, and the reds, as only 1950s Technicolor can give us.
Jack, thank you so much for your time. If you're in the audience, please stick around after the film so you can hear the rest of our conversation. Without further ado, from 1955, director Douglas Sirk's All That Heaven Allows.
Enjoy.
So, Jack, when were you first exposed to the work of Douglas Sirk? What was the first film you remember seeing?
I think my first movie of his was, ironically, his last movie, Imitation of Life, with Lana Turner, which is still my favorite Douglas Sirk movie. I didn't see this one, ironically, until it showed at TCM Fest a few years ago. Even though I'd heard about it, and I love Imitation of Life. I think the second one of his that I saw was Magnificent Obsession, which I like very much. I have to be honest, I do prefer the 1930s one with Robert Taylor and Irene Dunn, which is also a very good movie based on the exact same novel.
Oh,
But
I'm so sorry. No, I was going to say it's interesting. If you look at Douglas Sirk's career, I believe the original Magnificent Obsession was directed by John Stahl, who ended up
yes,
doing Imitation of Life, the original Imitation of Life from
yes,
1934, which was remade by Douglas Sirk. So
yes.
came full circle, I guess.
Yes. And they're both melodramas. They're both dramatic acting and big characters in big life situations and tragedies and romance, which was a hallmark of both the 1930s. And then Douglas Sirk brought it again 20 years later in the 1950s with the elevated technologies of the widescreen process, of beautiful Technicolor, and of a more cinematic experience, which is why you can love both for the story elements and the character elements and the acting. But that 1950s advanced technology adds to it. I think that happened with other remakes of 30s to 50s, like what comes to mind is An Affair to Remember,
Mhm.
is a remake of the movie Love Affair from 1939, and it's the exact same thing. You can love both, and you can see the difference between both.
Oh,
Yeah.
certainly. Well, when you're especially if you're talking about 50s remakes, my mind always goes to the big biblical epics. If you look at a
Mm,
movie like The Ten Commandments, Ben-Hur, The King of Kings, these are all very successful silent movies. But if you look at what they were able to do in the 50s with the VistaVision,
mhm,
CinemaScope, the
mhm.
full Technicolor, it really does elevate these stories to another level.
Yes.
Yeah, so
And it elevates the cinematic experience to another level. Yeah.
certainly. And speaking of the cinematic experience, you mentioned seeing this for the first time at the TCM Film Festival. I think I was at that screening. I don't know if they've shown it more than once, but I did see this at the TCM Festival
Uh-huh.
one year. So that was a great experience seeing it on the
Yeah.
big screen.
And what a perfect way to see it for the first time. Those of you in in your audience who are seeing it for the first time, you're seeing it in the right place, and that's in the cinemas. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So, one actor who I always feel the need to defend because obviously he's a very attractive leading man. And I know there's a lot of kind of controversy surrounding his talent, but I always found him a very sympathetic actor. I always found him very believable as Rock Hudson.
Hmm.
So, why do you feel like Rock Hudson doesn't get the appreciation as an actor as maybe some of his contemporaries?
Well, I think he was the first to not take acting terribly seriously. I think he just went there and did what his directors told him to do and wore what his costumers told him to wear and looked how his cinematographer told him to look. And by not being the Brando level of in-depth acting, by being more of a Hollywood studio system type actor. I think that's why he was kind of not taken very seriously. But of course, now we see that by doing the approach that he took, by just doing what he was told, and by being charismatic in his own right, that was all you needed for the cinema. I think a lot of directors, Douglas Sirk did that. That was how he approached filmmaking, was from a more technical aspect. But by doing all of the technical setup, all of the heart and head stuff, that's left up to the audience. I feel like Hitchcock does that as well. He was very aesthetically focused and very technically focused, but by doing that and by leaving it up to the actors to think what they wanted to think and feel what they wanted to feel, the audience watching it thinks what they want to think and feels what they want to feel. So
Oh,
I think there's something to be said for that. And
certainly. I mean,
we don't see that a lot in more modern movies. I think that's another reason I at least personally lean towards more older films.
no, I'm in the same boat. And even you look at today's movie stars, there's some wonderfully talented people out there.
Sure.
But I feel like nowadays, well, in the studio system, you had such a wonderful variety of actors of different types. I feel like generally everything was very well cast. Whereas now it seems like the actor pool is a lot smaller. So instead of finding the right performer for the right role, you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole by casting people because they're name actors instead of people who
Hmm.
are appropriate for that particular role.
Hmm.
But
Interesting.
Well,
Yeah.
what I just mean in terms of like now there's a small circle of actors, and I don't want to talk down, they're all very talented, but you have your Timothy Chalamets, your Sydney
Hmm.
Sweeneys, or whoever, and now we're trying to find material for them, which I guess it was always like that in the Hollywood olden days, but it doesn't feel like we have as much variety now as we did, 60, 70, 80 years ago.
Well, we seem to be steering away from more human stories.
Hmm.
Douglas Sirk. I even called him Douglas Sirk.
Yeah,
Todd Haynes, who is Douglas Sirk is Todd Haynes' favorite director. His
right.
movie last year, May December, was about aesthetics and about characters in elevated situations, and it that was my favorite movie of last year, as was The Holdovers, which is a human story and about simple characters in complicated situations. I tend to lean towards the more human and real type stories. And if you can elevate the aesthetics around them, that's what makes it cinematic. That's what I experienced watching Todd Haynes' May December last year, which was my favorite movie of last year. Yeah.
And I haven't seen that film, but based on the title, it seems to deal with similar themes, I would imagine, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, Todd Haynes' movie, probably his most famous movie, Far From Heaven,
Hmm.
is a direct homage to All That Heaven Allows that you just saw. So if you've seen both those movies, it's fun to watch those two in a double feature. Is an interesting experience if you've ever done that.
Hmm. Oh, certainly. Well, and I like how you mentioned the Douglas Sirk. He's a very operatic director. He's a very stylized director. And I think that's what makes cinema worth watching. We're not going to cinema to watch a reality TV show. We're not
Hmm.
going there to watch real life. Like you said, we're invested in the human drama, but it's the pageantry, it's the colors, it's the larger than life emotions that make the movie going experience so and enjoyable.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Do you have any closing thoughts on All That Heaven Allows?
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed it. It is something of a holiday film, at least much of it, and we are headed into the holiday season coming up. So maybe it's an unofficial holiday film. If you haven't seen it yet, Imitation of Life is the other Douglas Sirk movie I would highly recommend. And yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, that's the next Douglas Sirk to watch. And I hope everybody enjoyed it. Have a happy holiday season, and farewell from Jane Wyman's home studio of Warner Brothers.
All right, Mr. Jack Fields, thank you so much for your time.
Good to see you.
All right, good to see you. If you're in the audience, I hope you enjoyed tonight's conversation and film as much as we had having it. Once again, I'm Ryan Bijan. We'll see you next time.